Hi, everybody. Com 170. We have Jamie Sellinger, who's a Penn State alum and a Com 170 alum and a Belisario alum who works for NBC Universal. How cool is that? Jamie, thanks for being here.
Of course, always happy to help you out.
And on a Monday morning, I'm looking out the window and it's super foggy. Where are you at?
I'm in New York City.
Okay. Wow. Do you work in person at NBC at all? Or are you still at home? How's that
So
working out?
we've been remote since March, and I am not sure when we will be back. It's definitely been a challenge, to say the least.
What's the toughest part of being remote right now?
I would say one of the toughest parts is there's two things I would say. I would say the toughest part is, there's something to be said about being able to walk over to someone's desk and just quickly ask them a question versus now it's a whole process to kind of try to get them to answer your Teams call or answer your Zoom call or even just the text. And then I'll say the thing I miss and that I think is one of also the hardest things is just that inner office interaction, whether it's a hi or, how was your weekend? What are you doing? Or even just like the osmosis part of, you're sitting at your desk and the people, over the other side of the desk are talking about something and you're just have this ability to kind of take in information, even if you don't, realize it. So I definitely think that's been harder.
I like that. I haven't know that's the first I've heard of osmosis. That is true. Is that you learn what's going on, you don't know where it's going to fit. That's really good. I think do they give you any indication when you're going back, or is it too early to tell?
They have started to, you have the option to go in, but they really haven't given us an exact date. I think a lot of it is, as I'm sure you all know, it's very much up in the air. And unfortunately, New York is getting bad again. So,
But you live in the city.
I grew up here.
Okay, that's right. Well, we're going to begin with right now, then we'll double back to how you got here. What is your job? What are your duties?
Okay.
Let's cover that first.
So I'm currently a sales planner at NBC in the sports group. When I first got the job, I was solely worked on TV. I've now converged and also work on digital. So the way I like to describe my job is it's kind of like you're putting a puzzle together. So I work with an account executive who has most of the face-to-face interactions with clients, or I guess Zoom to Zoom now. And so a client will come in, let's say a car company, and they'll say, I have X amount of money to spend and I want it on all of three. So we work with NBC, NBCSN, and Golf Channel and across all three networks. And he comes to me and he says, this is what they want. And then it's my job to kind of piece together that. So figure out how much money on one network, how much money on another network, and pretty much placing the dollars and the units where I think not only will benefit the client, but will benefit our inventory as well. And so, for instance, like a Sunday night football plan, I will go in and I will decide based on the cost of the units. And, for someone like State Farm, you're going to want to put them in the Green Bay, Kansas City game because Rodgers and Mahomes are their guys. So it's a lot of like putting together puzzle pieces, and it's really interesting because, those commercials wouldn't air unless the puzzle was put together. Day to day, a lot of it is also just, making sure that things run smoothly. So making sure we have everything we need for the commercials to air, making sure all the day-to-day questions are answered. And, some things are normal, for lack of a better word, but obviously when the world shut down, I had gotten promoted to planner about 2 weeks before the world shut down. And the few weeks after that, as I'm sure you all know, are probably the longest 3 weeks of my life. Everything changed. I mean, we were giving dollars back. We were trying to figure out if we could put golf money onto broadcast. And so it was a different kind of puzzle. And in the end, I think it was a great learning experience. And, God forbid, knock on wood, that doesn't happen again. But I think the puzzle part and just kind of remembering like those commercials wouldn't air without what I do and what my team does.
A couple really neat things there is when you said what not only benefits the client, but then benefits the company? What things do you take into consideration with that?
So if we need help filling a certain show, um, we'll try to, place as much as we can in there, obviously without overdoing it on our end and the client's end. Obviously, a client doesn't want to see their commercial every commercial spot, and we wouldn't do that to them. And then just really making sure that if, like I said, if we need something filled, or, if I have that extra spot in that Kansas City Green Bay game, and, State Farm is is looking for something, that might be something we present to them. Because, I mean, Sunday Night Football usually is not off of their radar. They normally know when that's happening. But if they didn't, and we were like, hey, this could be a great opportunity for you, that's something we would present to them.
Well, that's a great example. So your skill set that goes into puzzle making is understanding advertising, the dollars. You got to understand the sports. You have to understand the audience. You have to understand the client, and then you have to understand your own company and your own needs. Like, so those are all so many skills. Where did you get those skills? Did you get any of those as an undergrad, or did you get those as you've been promoted?
I think the biggest thing that you learn in college is time management. And that kind of relates to all of these skills. I know that, if a client needs, if I get, multiple requests, I kind of have to learn, and I've taught myself, obviously, if you have a paper and an exam, both due within the next week, you try to balance your time. So whether it's working on one and finishing it, or kind of touching both, that definitely was something that I think I learned in college. I mean, I'm dealing with money amounts I never thought I would deal with. So that's definitely not something I could have been prepared for.
What kind of money amount? Sorry to interrupt.
Like millions of dollars.
Oh yeah.
So obviously, no college kid really probably sees $1 million.
What does a and I'm going to interrupt again, but this is cool. So one ad, a State Farm ad on that Sunday night game, is there a dollar amount for that?
So yes, but it is determined. So we have a whole pricing and planning team that we interact with every day, and it's based off of, how football is doing. It's based off of how football did last year. It's based off of the demo. So obviously, someone like a State Farm might have a different demo than, Wendy's, or like P&G, or they maybe might have the same demo, but it all really depends on kind of all those components coming together.
Now I'll let you go back to where did you accumulate all those skills to where you're at now?
I think a lot of it is you learn as you go, and it sounds kind of silly because you're like, how am I supposed to learn these skills? But you definitely are given the tools. When I first started at my first job, which was also at NBC, they didn't expect you to know how to do X, Y, and Z, but they saw that you wanted to be able to do it. You wanted to do whatever you needed to do it. That was a lot of do, sorry.
No,
And you,
as long as it's not doo-doo, we're okay.
and you have the skills to prove to them that you can learn it, and that you have the skills to say, hey, I need help. Are you the person I go to? I saw you have this job title. Can I sit with you for 15-30 minutes and pick your brain? Honestly, like things like going to office hours, weirdly enough, and having that sometimes uncomfortable conversation, depending on what you're talking about, really kind of prepares you more than you think.
Oh, that's good.
Because obviously not every conversation is going to be great. Especially in the crazy world we're living in now, where, for instance, our Thanksgiving game got moved to Sunday and now it's airing on Tuesday. So there's a lot of, it's all about learning your audience. And, we don't treat every client the same, in the sense that they don't react the same way to certain things. Some clients take news harder, so you obviously need to focus on them. Some clients are easygoing, so, you don't need to spend as much time with them. And it's a lot of like kind of the same, going back to the time management, just learning, where to place your time, and, and then move on to the next thing.
So you're talking about the Steelers and the Ravens game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being bumped and bumped. So how does that impact Jamie? how does that impact your life of what you had to do and maybe even extra hours,
Well,
that decision?
we were supposed to have a semi-short day on Wednesday. We ended up working a full day. Right now it's a lot of client management. So something that, you might not think of, but a lot of clients, for instance, will run a Black Friday creative because it's the night before Black Friday, or a Cyber Monday because it's technically airing before Monday. So a lot of clients will have to now change their creative, which is both work on both of our parts, obviously. And just making sure they are kind of up to date with what our next steps are. So knowing, what time the game's going to air. Obviously, they know it's going to air Tuesday, what time it's going to air. Do they have the ability to just straight shift their units and their commercials? Are they able to swap out their creative? I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of working together because, you unfortunately can't predict a pandemic and the things that come along with it, unfortunately. So it's definitely been a lot of collaborating on all ends.
Wow, it's really interesting case study. Um, so you have to make sure, maybe even twice, right? That they're getting, do they get you the actual spot and then you route it through? And then how many spots are there in a game like that?
So we have a whole team that deals with the physical traffic. Our job is just to reach out and make sure they know where to send it and when to send it by.
Gotcha.
Um, any client could run, I mean, almost as many spots as they, want to pay for. I don't know the exact amount, but there are at least over, I want to say 10 or 12 clients that run in each game.
Are there like in a regular game like that? Do you know that there's going to be 114 commercial slots or something like that?
So I think it's based off of formatting. We also have a team that works on that, but kind of something we always say is, so almost every Friday before our Sunday night game, we get pods, and that is the position of your commercial. And all the clients want that because they want to share it with the client. And kind of our caveat is, due to the nature of live sports, things are subject to change. Because if, there's something crazy going on and you're not going to cut to commercial just because it's, a certain time and that's what you were planning on. So that's just, you kind of learn too, like there's so many different people that you interact with every day. And that's kind of something you learn at school too. I mean, you most likely don't have the same people in every class. You don't have this, not every teacher is the same, and it's all about learning, how to interact and who you're interacting with.
I thought your answer was really cool. So just even the answer, you're talking about all these different teams and constituencies that, in some ways you're the hub of the wheel, in some ways that you're the spoke. So your day must be, is it crazed?
Yes, more than not. Some days are slower than others, but I like it. It makes the day go by. Makes, next thing you know, it's out of nowhere, it's 3 o'clock, and you're like, oh.
Well, you told a story a couple of weeks ago, what I thought was really cool about your first spot that aired. Can you share that story? I thought that was neat.
So going back to kind of dealing with a lot of money, I work with Hyundai, who is one of our biggest spenders in Sunday Night Football. And so with everything that was kind of going on in the world and, the preseason being canceled and, no one really knowing if, that first game on that Thursday was going to happen. And it did. And it was really cool to kind of, watch your commercial come up and you're like, hey, that's because I did that. And, you kind of then think about, all the work that goes into it, not just from me, but, with the team I work with and, going back to that traffic team and the formatting team and the planning team. And it's kind of an aha moment in a lot of ways where you're like, okay, so that's why, we go through our day to day, because something as simple as that, can kind of make you think, all right, like my job's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and when it aired, you have personal ownership because that's literally the tip of the iceberg. No one even thinks about everything you describe, which is why this is so cool. We're going to get to how you got to where you're at right now, but I want to ask, and you having taken the class, I go here a lot, is how much of your job is sports and how much is industry? And does the sports, um, I
Hmm.
guess is the leading question, how much cooler does it make it? And I think it's kind of neat that you're throwing in, you got Rodgers and Mahomes with the State Farm. So you got to know that stuff too.
So I grew up playing sports. So working in sports has been a dream. Um, you deal with a lot of both. So while I do work on all, physical, like I work on NBC and all the sports on there and NBCSN and Golf Channel and even the Olympic Channel. Um, you also, like you said, are working a lot with the industry in the sense that you kind of really need to know what's going on and, you need to kind of follow, maybe why, a certain game didn't do as well. Is it because it went up against another game on a different network? I mean, working in sports is amazing. While I think it's harder to get into sports, any way you can kind of dip your toe into that pool is important. I was fortunate enough that when I was applying for jobs, because of a contact I had made and, stayed in touch with, he called me and he said, listen, we have this job. You love sports. We want you to apply. And that was that. I always wanted to get into sports, but I also knew that I just kind of needed to get in any way I could. And what I love, and I said this a few weeks ago, what I love about NBC is everyone is willing to talk to you. So just because if I wasn't in sports, just because I'm not in sports, doesn't mean the sports team won't talk to me. Doesn't mean I couldn't reach out to someone and say, hey, I'd love to pick your brain. Everyone's open to it. I mean, I think one of the best parts about NBC is everyone wants to learn about what everyone does. And but I guess back to your question, sports, you do have to, it's nice because I know how football works. I know how soccer works. I know, I watch the Olympics from start to finish. So you definitely kind of have to have that background because if someone says, NFL or EPL, you don't want to have to ask someone, hey, like, what do those mean? Um, so it's definitely been a blessing and I'm very fortunate that I get to work in an industry that I love.
Wow, that's very cool. Well, the fact that your stories about working the Olympics, what was that like? And that was your first entree into that was for NBC, right? And you were still an undergrad.
Yes, I was going into my junior year. And I had found the internship online and I applied and I never thought I would get it. And I never imagined that it would lead to what it did. Being able to work physically in Rio for the Olympics. And I went to pretty much every event and I got to meet all these people, and I have stayed in touch with them. And when I then worked, interned at NBC the next summer, I reached out to those same people and just the connections I made. I mean, the group of interns I worked with, we still talk. The group of us in New York try to get together whenever we can. It's just you never know who you're going to become close with from interning. And in fact, when I interned at NBC the next summer, um, a few of the people I interned with now I work with. I mean, when I showed up for my first day at my job, I ran into this kid Paul I interned with, and he was like, "Hey, you're back!" like, but I mean, working at the Olympics, I mean, we kind of say it wasn't real life.
Well, you were in it was like, would you call it client relations or business relations?
Yeah,
What did
so
you do
our
there exactly?
job was pretty much, if you were the client, to make you feel welcome and make sure you knew, where everything was and that we were kind of your point of contact and to get you from A to B and back, whether that was to the Today Show down the street, whether that was to swimming and back, whether that was to golf and back, it was just to make sure that or even the experiences. So we took them to Christ the Redeemer and just making sure that you as a client and, had the best time possible and you didn't have anything to worry about. So
Well, that's kind of even a common thread with you now, client, client, client. What are the things that folks don't realize? And I think because it is a business, whether it's that hands-on or following through, how much is every day is it client driven? Is that emphasized internally?
I think almost everything we do for a lot of reasons is client driven. I mean, I'm only building a plan because a client asked to see one. I'm only answering questions from clients because they reached out to me, or I'm only reaching out to them because I need something from them. I think a lot of it, obviously you want to do your job and you want to do well, and that's driven, from you. But in a client facing industry, pretty much most of our day is spent, client relations. So, making sure that if a client is freaking out for some reason, you de-freak them out. So it's definitely a huge part of what we do.
I'm going to put D freak up there with us along the Jamie lessons. Let's go back to your time at Penn State. And we'll get career in a second, but what are your best memories? And this doesn't have to be work related, but what are your best memories? Now, are you're 18 grad or 18 grad? 18 grad.
Which seems like forever ago now.
Was it at PR? Were you at PR? Were you advertising?
I was ad, yeah. I was ad, and then I minored in Spanish and international studies.
Oh, why is that? Which I think is really smart.
So growing up, I went to a dual language school. So half the day was in English, half the day was in Spanish, and then a full day. And then I just continued with Spanish. And so I studied abroad in Seville. And if you can study abroad, it's probably one of the best things I've ever done. I actually still talk to my host family. They came to visit me last year, and I was supposed to visit them in March. Go to a football game, tailgate. I don't have to tell you that is a huge part of being a Penn Stater. You have Mr. Football here himself. I think I realized I took it for granted, but I used to just walking from class to class, you kind of just look around and realize, all the different people you saw walking around, all the different personalities, all the different experiences people have had and are going to have. And you kind of just look around and you're like, wow, this place is incredible. I'm sure you all know, but be proud of the fact that you went to Penn State. It's one of the best universities, if not the best in the country. I'm a little biased, obviously. But I've learned, and my parents will tell you before, when I first started going to Penn State, all of a sudden people that they worked with were like, oh, your daughter goes there, right? Like, so-and-so went there, or their daughter or son goes there. And you just create these connections that you might not have before, because, someone's walking by my desk and very proudly know that I went to Penn State, and they're like, oh, it just starts these conversations that might not have come up if they didn't know that. So be proud. That's definitely something I've learned.
That's good stuff. Any extracurriculars at Penn State?
So I was in a sorority, and I was very involved with Thon. I danced in Thon, also one of the greatest things I've ever done. If you can have any involvement in Thon, or even if you just, I guess it's virtual this year, just watch it. It is life-changing. It is, it changed my life, that's for sure. And then I was really involved with Relay for Life, and then I played intramural sports when I could, and I just tried to enjoy, being a student. Unfortunately, that life doesn't last forever, although I know everyone wishes it could.
It's funny. My daughter, who just got a new job at L'Oreal in New Jersey. She's really psyched. She was home after quarantine over Thanksgiving, and we walked on campus, and it was empty. But a lot of what you just said, she looked back at her time in Penn State and said, it goes fast, and you don't realize, all the opportunities and everything here. So it's great to hear you reinforce that. You were a pretty big time soccer player. You played soccer your entire life.
I did.
Where did that fit in to what you do now, and where you got, and who you are?
So I think the biggest thing that soccer taught me was the idea of working as a team. And, throughout your life, and, whether it's a team, that you're paired up with in class, or a team that you work with, or, a sports team, you kind of learn that there's this specific, there's different hierarchies, and, how you deal with those. And, that just because you think you should, take the ball left, but the captain says, kick it right. You got to do what the captain says and trust that they are leading you the right way. And I think it definitely teaches you to trust other people. It teaches you to work with other people, as I'm sure all of group projects, for example, are not always the easiest thing. But then I also think it just drove my love for sports and my love, for camaraderie. And that was one of the reasons that drove me to Penn State, was this fact that, you walk around campus and you can tell people love being there. You can tell that they love the fact that they can wear the Nittany Lion on their hat, or, the players walk around. And I mean, I'll say, when I saw Saquon in front of the hub, like, I was a little starstruck. But I think it really just has driven me to succeed because, I love to win. I mean, anyone who's played sports loves to win. And, a win I've learned can be something as little as, you get a good job from your manager, or, you get an A on a paper you wrote. Just to celebrate the little wins, I think, is a good way to describe it.
I loved how your answer with team overlapped the description of some of your days and trying to make things happen. That's a very cool connect there. So is there a career trajectory from where you're at? And is in line with that is, I mean, it just sounds cool to work for NBC Universal. Is it as cool as that? And where would you like to end up?
So I think one of the, and both of my parents, or I have four of them, but two of them are in this business. And so I kind of have seen this business go from a TV centric world to TV and now digital. And I think they would probably agree with me that because of all these new opportunities and all of these things that are changing, there isn't specifically one career path in terms of, just because I'm X, I then need to be Y. And I think that's kind of exciting in a lot of ways, because it doesn't pressure you that if you don't get to be Y, that, your career is doomed and a lot of other things. But I mean, and, going to your next question, there's a reason I interned twice at NBC. There's a reason I wanted to come back. I said it before, but the openness of people to just, invite you for coffee or let you pick their brain for 15 minutes. And, just the feeling you got when you were walking through the halls of just people saying hi to each other. And, you kind of saw that. And I see it, and I have it now, some of my friends at work are some of my best friends because you really spend most of your time with them. I mean, you don't think about it until you really sit down and you're like, what did I do this past week? And I was like, oh, I was at work for 5 out of the 7 days. And it's, another amazing thing about NBC is just the different parts of the business that it touches. So you have sports, you have entertainment, you have news, you have the cable aspect, you now have Peacock, you now have, this huge Olympics team, as, the Olympics is one of the biggest events in the world, and you have the World Cup, and just the ability to kind of say, I work at a company that does all of these things is pretty incredible. And it's something I am very proud of, kind of like a Penn Stater. NBC, you have to be proud to say you work there. And I would definitely say the sports group is very close in the sense that we all love sports. There's something about, when you could tell when everything started to get canceled, a lot of people were just down because, a lot of people love kicking back on a Sunday and watching football all day. I know that's what I did yesterday. I watched football all day. So it's just, I'm very lucky that I got to, start my career for, both in the intern sense and in the actual job sense there. And, I love every moment, and there are a lot of opportunities. So.
That's great stuff. Jamie, this was terrific. Um, I learned so much. And I love the team comparison. I love the osmosis.
Yeah.
I love the NBC and Penn State. There's a commonality to your life. And I guess, you've been mentioning that all along, but it's cool when that works.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. And, you know, biggest piece of advice I can give you is don't give up. And stay, if you meet someone who interests you, connect with them on LinkedIn, reach out to them. Don't be, because you never know that they might be the person when they're looking for a job and they see your name and they're like, oh, you know, I like that this person kept reaching out to me. I mean, you never know who is going to make that decision. And you never know when someone's going to be able to say, hey, you know, I met Professor Poorman and he was really cool. I think we should give him a chance. Like you just, especially in today's world, you never know.
So it's cool if everyone reaches out to you
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. I know you're a big LinkedIner.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd love to help. I've had a few people from the Ad PR Club, and you know, as I kind of always say, but people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah. Wow,
Of
this is great. Appreciate your time. Middle of
course.
your workday. This is a Monday, so Penn State plays at Rutgers on Saturday in
Better
football.
win.
You're predicting a win, of course.
I'm not predicting a win because as this season has taught us, nothing is predictable. And that's just kind of a 2020 feeling. But I mean, I guess Rutgers gave Michigan a run for their money, but I mean, it's Rutgers.
Good finish. Good finish. Jamie, thanks so much. We'll be in touch soon.
Of course.
Okay. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
very much. All right. Bye-bye.